If it's happening in professional wrestling, we're breaking it down. The matches, the moments, the rumors, and yes, even the hot takes. This is Pro Wrestling Focus. No nonsense, no wasted motion, just pure wrestling talk. Now, here's your host, Cody Springer.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Pro Wrestling Focus. And WWE made some major roster cuts over the last few days, and there's a lot to unpack. From main roster names like Braun Strowman and Dakota Kai to NXT standouts like Cora Jade and Gigi Dolin. Nobody saw some of these coming, so I'm going to break down who was released, what might have led to it, and why it's not just about who's talented. It's about timing, injuries, money, and direction. We've got backstage reports, talent speaking out, and even a little drama over how some of these names were labeled lazy. Let's get into it. All right, guys, I don't know how long this podcast will be exactly, but, we're going to talk about the releases. I think that WWE released a good number of names from both the main roster and from NXT. Some of these names caught people off guard, others not so much. But here's what we know, what we think, and what's being said. So these are the releases from the main roster: Braun Strowman, Dakota Kai, Shayna Baszler, Katana Chance, and Kaden Carter. From NXT, Cora Jade, Gigi Dolin, Jakara Jackson, Oro Mensah, Eddie Thorpe, Riley Osborne, Javier Bernal, Gallus, consisting of Wolfgang, Mark and Joe Coffey, and Danny Palmer. And then Shotzi, she wasn't released, but her contract reportedly won't be renewed. More on her in a bit. So why were the talent released? There's been no official reason given, but it's pretty clear that this comes down to business. Whether it's budget cuts or WWE clearing space for new talent coming in, maybe a mix of both. It's part of the game. People are upset, and I get it. Fans have their favorites, but WWE is a machine. This is no different than roster cuts in the NFL or the NBA. Sometimes you sign a deal and other times you're shown the door. Cold? Yeah. Reality? Also, yeah. But let's go ahead and break down some notable names that were released. We'll start off with Braun Strowman. He was probably the biggest name out of the bunch here. Braun Strowman, he's been released before, back in 2021. And he was rehired in 2022 when Triple H took the wheel. But let's be real, Braun never got back to that monster run he had in 2018 and 2020. He's reportedly dealing with partial paralysis in one leg, and he's 41 years old. At this point, retirement might be on the table. If he still wants to go, someone like TNA or even New Japan might be interested in giving him a short run. But if he wants to bow out gracefully, no one would blame him. Let's talk about Dakota Kai. This one stings a bit. Dakota's talented, but injuries may have caught up to her. She tore her ACL, returned, tore her meniscus, returned again, and then got a concussion. That's a lot in a short time. WWE probably saw her as injury prone, and let's not forget, she was also released back in 2022 before being brought back for damage control. I still think she's got something to offer, and if I'm TNA, yeah, I'm gonna be on the phone with her once her 90-day no compete's up, for sure. I think she would bring a lot to the table in that women's division over at TNA. Let's talk about Cora Jade now. Yeah, I mean, this one makes zero sense to me. Cora just came back from an ACL tear in January, and she's got star potential written all over her. But maybe NXT is going through a shift when it comes to their women's division, with names like Jordan Grace, Stephanie Vaquer, Julia, and Zarya in the mix. Talent with major experience outside of WWE. It might be that the NXT 2.0 era is being phased out. Still, if I'm WWE, I don't let a talent like Cora walk without a real reason. And then Gigi Dolin, another strange one. Gigi was in a solid angle with JC Jane after Toxic Attraction broke up. She came back from injury, worked with Tatum Paxley, even had appearances with TNA as part of the talent exchange, and then gone. She responded to the reports from good old Dave, Davey Meltzer. He was saying that the reason why the NXT talent was released is because they were labeled as lazy by WWE officials. Saying that they weren't working hard enough in the performance center, and they just questioned their commitment. But Gigi wasn't having that. She put out there on X that she said, and I quote, "When I wasn't traveling to work for either of the two companies I was working for, I trained very hard 3 to 4 days a week, bumping my ass off and doing cardio drills with one of the best and toughest coaches I've ever worked with. So yeah, I don't want to hear this, LOL. The way my body feels says otherwise." Gigi, she's not afraid to call out the nonsense. That's why I believe her. And then Cora Jade also chimed in with her own story, and this one's disturbing. She said, and I quote, "This, plus can't forget having to go to my own gym outside of work after strength and conditioning. That wasn't doing anything for me other than get me body shamed by my bosses, coworkers, and fans. Crazy. If this happened, and there's no reason not to believe her, it's unacceptable. There's no place in today's WWE for body shaming. If it came from management, someone needs to be fired yesterday, because that is absolute bullshit. There should be no body shaming in this company. The talent needs to be respected. They need to, be treated fairly. And if there was any kind of body shaming or anything like that going on, then that person needs to be shit canned. Because that's crazy. You go into a workplace and you're busting your ass off, and then you end up getting body shamed by people in management. That's ridiculous. Now, coworkers, if they're doing that kind of thing, then that probably only shows that that there's something about themselves that they're unhappy with. But instead of dealing with it in a way that's going to better themselves, they rather tear somebody else down. And it happens all the time. People will see another person, call them fat and ugly and all this, when in fact they're the ones who are ugly and fat in the inside. It just boggles my mind. And then the fans, wrestling fans will say the most disrespectful shit in the world. They really will. Yeah, because wrestling fans, unfortunately, are disrespectful as fuck. And that they don't apologize for it. And they are among the worst kinds of people out there. And I'm a wrestling fan myself, but I have respect for the wrestlers, because, they're the ones who are putting their bodies and lives on the line in the ring. If something goes wrong, they could have a major injury. They could die, if something goes really wrong. And there are been people who have died in the wrestling ring. So, I mean, I'm not going to, disrespect these people because they're in the ring, destroying their bodies for our entertainment. So I'm not going to disrespect them, let alone body shame them. That's just ridiculous. So yeah, I mean like I said, especially management, that needs to be addressed. And if somebody did body shame her in management, they need to be fired. But let's talk about Shotzi. Yeah, she wasn't technically released, but her contract won't be renewed. She had a decent run on the main roster before going back to NXT to help elevate talent. She went down there to, she had a match with Lyra Valkyria last year. She tore her ACL, and then she came back in December, and then she, joined up with Gigi Dolin and Tatum Paxley, and then, she posted her last match on from WWE Speed. It's that little short series on X where the talent have 3-minute matches. And, Shotzi, her last official WWE match was against Zoe Stark on Speed. And she posts on X, this is my last match. Can't wait to wrestle for a lot longer than 3 minutes. And then when a fan accused her of chasing a paycheck, she clapped back with, I never gave a shit about the money. And that's the truth. You got to respect that, because that shows that Shotzi's heart was in this for the right reasons. She wasn't in the business for the money. She was in it because she loved it and she enjoyed it. She appreciated the opportunity. And now, she's going to be looking forward to the next phase of her wrestling career. Whatever that may be. And Triple H's involvement, a lot of people were wondering, if this was a Triple H call, or if this was TKO, Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful said if he, meaning Triple H, wants someone to be there, they're going to be there. That sounds about right. But I think there's more to the story than just that. TKO probably told Nick Khan, who is the CEO of WWE, that cuts were necessary. And then Khan told Triple H, you make the call. So Triple H had to choose with a business mind, not a sentimental one. Tough decisions, but that's the game. But yeah, look, releases are always tough. Some hurt more than others. But these aren't final chapters. They're just transitions. Some of these names will go on to shine elsewhere. Drew McIntyre got cut once too. And now look at him. One of the top stars in WWE. To the fans who are upset, be upset, sure. But understand this is part of the business. Talent will land on their feet. And who knows? This might be the moment some of them needed to hit the next gear. I want to talk real quick about some of that Matt Cardona, also known as Zack Ryder, said on X. And, Matt Cardona is another guy who WWE fired, about 5 years ago. And ever since then, he's been running hard on the indies. And, he's flirted with coming back to WWE, and returning to the company and all that. And I think it will happen eventually. But yeah, this is a guy who's been running hard on the indies. I mean, this guy's been appearing basically in every promotion you can think of. You know, he's made appearances for AEW, TNA, GCW, MLW, NWA. Yeah, like this guy, you know, has been running hard in the indies ever since he got released. But, you know, Matt Cardona posts on X, to the recently released, you have 3 choices: fade into obscurity, coast off your WWE name, 3, work your ass off, reinvent yourself, make a lot of money, and have a lot of fucking fun. Love, the indie god. And you know what? Matt Cardona is absolutely right. I mean, you can just fade into obscurity, you know, not sure what to do. You can coast off your WWE name, or you can reinvent yourself, you know, make a lot of money on the indies, because I'm telling you, like, if you've worked for WWE, you are going to get paid a lot more money to come in and make appearances for these indie companies than just a guy who's just starting off in the business, or, you know, he's had a few years in the business. You know, you are going to make a lot more money being a former WWE star, because, you know, you had the WWE machine behind you. And years ago, I can't remember who made this video. You know, it, like, basically, it was pointing out the difference between WWE and TNA stars. It was like a comparison of how vast and powerful the WWE machine is. And this was around the time where WWE was still on top under Vince McMahon, and this was when TNA was the number 2 promotion in the world. This was way before AEW came along. And, like, you know, WWE stars had more hits on Google, even like low-level names, compared to TNA stars. You know, so yeah, I mean, I think it just goes to show that, you know, once you worked for WWE, you know, you'll be set. You know, even if you are let go by them, you'll still be set. You know, you're going to be contacted by indie companies as long as you didn't do anything stupid. You know, you'll be contacted. You'll always have work. You know, you'll have no short of work coming your way. So yeah, you'll be contacted by the MLWs and GCWs and you know, and then AEW, TNA, you know, Japan. You know, there's going to be countless opportunities for these talent, you know, now that they're no longer a part of the WWE. And now some of them are going to have to wait 90 days before they can go work anywhere else, you know, because, you know, if you're a main roster talent, you have that standard 90-day no-compete clause attached to you, so you cannot work for any other company until your 90 days are up. So they're going to pay you for those 3 months that you're off. But during that time, you know, you can contact independent promotions and set up dates, you know, set up interviews, you know, set up a bunch of things. For NXT stars, you know, they have a 30-day no-compete clause attached to their contract. So basically they have a month off, and then they can go off and do whatever they want to do. You know, they can sign with AEW or TNA or whatever the case may be after their 30 days are up. So here in the next month, here in June, you know, we might be hearing some talent from NXT who have signed with AEW or TNA, because, you know, Tony Khan is going to be picking up that phone and trying to bring some of these people in. You just know that he's going to. And TNA as well, you know, TNA, you know, like I said, I think Dakota Kai would be a good fit in TNA. And, yeah, I hope she ends up there. But yeah, I think what Matt Cardona said, yeah, I think 100% needs to be listened to. All right, I think that will do it for this episode. And look, cuts like these never sit well, but they're a part of the game. Some of these names had potential, some were bad luck, and others were just caught in the shuffle. WWE is a business first, and when TKO wants numbers trimmed, someone's getting cut. Whether these talents bounce back, land in another company, or hang it up, that's their journey now. I just hope fans remember that behind every release is a human being. I'll keep tracking where these stories go next. Until then, thanks for listening. And later on this week, we'll be talking about what happened on Raw from, this past Monday. Well, tonight's Raw, actually, I'm talking about. And then what happened on SmackDown as well from this past Friday, and be talking about the latest news and rumors. I just wanted to, make a special episode here to talk about these releases because, they're a big story. And, because if I would have waited until later in the week to talk about this, then would have had such a loaded show. And, I don't want to take away from all the talk about what's going on WWE programming. So that's why I wanted to come on here and talk about the releases. I wish the best of luck to everybody who was let go by WWE. I hope everyone finds their footing wherever they may go. And to the listeners, thank you for listening. And remember to stay focused.